Good morning, everyone. 17 minutes after the hour. Welcome to the Sunrise Show. I want to bring in a very special guest, Pete Hoekstra, former U.S. Congressman from the great state of Michigan, representing the 2nd District. He was in Congress for 18 years, from 1993 to 2011, but even more so was appointed chairman of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and he served as the chair from 2004 through January 2007, and then recently wrote a book the end of last year, The Architects of Disaster, The Destruction of Libya. Pete Hoekstra. And Pete, it's great to have you on this morning, and thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you.
You know, you see this, Pete, and U.S. House of Intelligence. We could go anywhere with this. The 9/11 report, the redacted pages. We haven't talked about that whole thing, but I leapfrogged over this whole horrible tragedy on American soil. This brutal attack in Orlando. These are my fellow Americans. And I am angry. I am righteously angry that our elected leaders, what are they doing? This is a red alert as far as I'm concerned. Pete, take it from there.
Well, it is a red alert, but it's a red alert internationally. I mean, we now have ISIS. It has a caliphate in the Middle East. It has a caliphate in parts of Africa. The effect of radical jihadism on a global basis is just exponentially greater than what it was 15 years ago. And you and me and other Americans were angry and disappointed because 15 years after 9/11, we're still involved in this conflict, and our leaders don't agree on what they're going to call it. But we're losing. And Americans are dying. Christians and other religious minorities are being massacred and executed throughout the Middle East and parts of Africa, and America just sits here. It used to be that America would matter, that America matters. What we thought and what we did matters. And right now, when you're fighting the threat from radical Islam, America doesn't matter. We don't have a strategy. The free world is looking for leadership. We're not providing it. Europe's not providing it. And so this cancer continues to spread. It's infecting Europe, and we know it's here, and it's growing here.
You know, it's a shame, Pete. And ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with former Congressman for the great state of Michigan, Pete Hoekstra, and he currently writes for the Investigative Project on terrorism, the website for that, investigativeproject.org. And Pete's a prolific writer, and it's really wonderful what you see and how you see it. But then the next thing is, I was so impressed by the King of Jordan after his pilot was beheaded in such a gruesome way. He rallied his crew and led the charge, literally in a fighter bomber, and went and attacked. And I'm just thinking, where's the U.S. on all of this?
Well, the U.S. is still struggling. Our president, seems to think it's a big deal that this guy may be radicalized or committed to ISIS at the last minute. Although there appears to be a lot of evidence that there was planning going into this, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether he committed a month ago, whether he committed 3 months ago, or whether he committed at the last minute. He acted out in terms of radical jihadism, and I believe one of the reasons that you're seeing this cancer metastasize throughout the free world is that they do have momentum. People like winners, and right now ISIS and other radical jihadist groups are winning. They're on the move. They've attacked in Paris, they've attacked in Brussels, they've attacked in San Bernardino, and now they've attacked in Orlando. They don't see a resolve on the part of America or the West to confront them and defeat them. And as long as they don't see that resolve, they see weakness, and they will take advantage of it.
It's horrific that is going on. And what's even more, and this is what is so, it fuels my righteous anger, is that, Pete, the political agenda is seemingly more important, and you've got evidence by all the issues that face us as Americans and faces our federal government, but yet the political agenda is more important. And you even saw it yesterday in the House of Representatives, and the Democrats were yelling at Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, we want a bill, and they're all after about gun control. Is this the only answer that the Democrats have? That gun control is, and when you look at the political agenda, Americans are dying, but yet the political agenda is so strong. Does this make you sick, Pete?
It does, because it's not gun control. Internationally, in 2001, roughly 2,500 to 3,000 people a year were dying as a result of radical jihadist attacks. By 2015, that number had grown from, now remember that it was 2,500. In 2014, and again in 2015, and I think we're on pace to see it again, if not higher, in 2016, the number is close to 29,000. A tenfold increase, and there's no sign that this is going to be abating. So let's give the gun control advocates total and say, hey, if you get total, and I don't believe this to be true, say, okay, we're going to give you every piece of gun control legislation you want, and so this problem will now stop. And do we really believe this problem will now stop in the United States? Well, what about the 28,000 people, excuse me, who are dying internationally? The Christians, the Jews who are being massacred. Is that going to stop? Is this going to stop ISIS? They refuse to have a discussion on the threat from radical jihadism. And we've had two presidents that have said Islam is a religion of peace, and for many Muslims it probably is, but for a fraction or a part of the Muslim community, it is not. It is an inspiration to do what they are doing. And if we don't fight and eliminate and destroy this ideology and recognize it for what it is, this is something that our children and our grandchildren are going to inherit.
And this hurt, this anguish, this horrible, senseless tragedy in Orlando that have affected these hundreds and hundreds of people, it's senseless. And I just wonder where our leaders are thinking that what they're doing is making a difference. And how do they sleep at night? I mean, this is my next problem is if you're not solving the problem, but yet you're politicizing the problem to gain re-election, that's really kind of sick. Pete, also too, I remember that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, she would not acknowledge Boko Haram. She didn't want to give them credence because the FBI and the CIA came to her and said, we need to acknowledge them as a terrorist group so we can do what we need to do. And she refused to do it. And then within a few short years, Boko Haram down in South Africa grabbed all those women. Actually,
that's right.
It was Nigeria, I think.
This is what we're seeing. It is spreading throughout all of Africa, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's Kenya, Mali. These countries are all somewhat on the edge because this threat is now there. And the scary thing is this is going to be a long, hot summer in Europe, obviously in the Middle East and in Africa, but it's also going to be a long, hot summer for Europe. And what we've seen in Orlando is this may just be the beginning of attacks here in the United States. We have no reasonable expectation that Orlando is a one-off, that it was the only attack we're going to see. When you've got the director of the FBI saying he's got 1,000 active investigations in all 50 states, and this guy in Orlando was not even one of those 1,000, it tells you the kind of threat that we face today.
Exactly. We're visiting with Pete Hoekstra. He's a recent author of The Architects of Disaster, but a former chair of the House Intelligence Committee from 2004 to 2007 in the U.S. House of Representatives from the great state of Michigan. Pete Hoekstra, if you can stay with us. Pete, we've got to get to a break. We'll come right back. His current website, investigativeproject.org, and he is writing and he is studying it, and it is a wealth of knowledge. And Pete, so thank you so much for your time. We'll be right back. More in the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. Good morning, everyone. 35 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to the Sunrise Show, and a real special guest because he spent from 2004 to 2007 as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, and he's now currently a Shillman Senior Fellow for the Investigative Project on Terrorism, the website investigativeproject.org, and none other than from the great state of Michigan, former Congressman Pete Hoekstra. And Pete, thank you so much for your time this morning. We're talking about getting service from our elected officials, and that this is a red alert in America, on American soil, as our fellow Americans were gunned down in brutal, cold blood by someone who hates America. Why they're even there, I don't even know. Why are we letting Muslims that might get in with any type of radical jihadism, But Pete, the next thing is the leadership. We need to be writing. I want to give our listeners things that they can do. You talk about writing, sending letters, but also discussing foreign policy. Talk about that, and of course, the importance of it. And then we've got the whole issue of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her. I don't even know what to call it at that point.
Yeah, well, I think it's time to hold our elected officials accountable, but it's also time to hold, as you and I were talking during the break there, and I didn't mention this, but I think it's also time to hold our media accountable. I think there's an awful editorial today in the Wall Street Journal, and it says, "Hey, neither one of the two candidates running for president is stepping up to the task." I may agree with that, but then they go on and they say, Donald Trump talks about Libya, and that just means he wants to be an isolationist, and it's kind of like, no. And this is what I wrote about in my book. Donald Trump is exposing one of the huge foreign policy disasters of this administration. They went in and they grabbed defeat out of the jaws of victory. Muammar Gaddafi was doing everything that we were asking him to do, and he did it for 8 years. In 2011, this administration decided that they were going to overthrow Gaddafi. It's been a disaster. Parts of it now are described as a caliphate. And these caliphates, this geographic area that ISIS or Al-Qaeda or other groups control, this now provides them an opportunity where they can plan, prepare, and train for the next attack, where they can develop safely their online, their internet strategy, their cyber strategy, where they can finance and raise money for their different kinds of attacks. But, the Wall Street, he wants to be in isolation. It's kind of like, okay, the Wall Street Journal, why don't you write an op-ed saying what a great deal it was that we went and got rid of Gaddafi, that we got rid of Mubarak and those types of things. It's time to hold the media accountable. It's time to hold our politicians accountable, for them all to recognize that we are at war. And yes, they should demand the best of their elected leaders, but don't try to read into what they're saying things that I don't think they're saying at all.
No. And here's the next thing, and I talk about this, is that these shootings, San Bernardino, Virginia Tech, Orlando, go on and on and on. And we had one within 100 miles of us at Umpqua Community College. And, this horrific, and communities are changed forever. And it's like I knew right away, this can happen anywhere. No American is safe. Anything is possible, and yet our elected officials simply are completely, you can tell, disconnected.
Yeah, it's going to take some hard decisions, and it's going to have to take a hard assessment of what we've done over the last 15 years. We need to develop a bipartisan strategy to move forward, one that can survive from one election to the next. we have to develop that strategy. We have to be forthright and open about what mistakes were made under both the Bush administration and the Obama administration, so that we can learn, we can cleanse that from our palate, and we can then move forward. It's been 15 years. It's now time to develop that strategy and to move forward and to finally confront, contain, and defeat this threat from radical Islam. Because if America doesn't lead, no one will.
Exactly. Pete, from your book, The Architects of Disaster, chapter 12, and Hillary Clinton is quoted, and how could this happen? This is after the Benghazi attacks and Libya and everything else. How could this happen in a country we helped liberate, in a city we helped save from destruction? And you write that the failure of understanding that besets the administration even now, the continuing refusal to grasp the very nature of the Islamic threat. And here's the question I've got for you, Pete. Now that we're in a presidential election year, people are maybe touting that Hillary may have more experience in foreign affairs than Donald Trump. But look what she did in Libya. Where has she been a success?
Well, she hasn't. I mean, she advocated for the overthrow of Mubarak in Egypt. Egypt almost became exactly the same thing that Libya is today, but the people in the military rose up against, yes, an elected Muslim Brotherhood government and said, well, we are not going in this direction. And so they threw out Morsi. Libya has been a disaster. Syria is a disaster. Remember, we basically shipped arms, ideology, and fighters from Libya into Syria. Those fighters became what is now known as ISIS. We in this administration sowed the seed for ISIS and the caliphate in that part of the world. It's pretty ugly.
It really is a sad thing, but this is where this righteous anger comes from. Is like, we don't do something, Pete, about this. Who's going to do it? And we've got innocent civilians being just slain, murdered, and for what? And what is this? And it's just the destruction of American lives. And it doesn't make any sense to me why the political agenda, well, I obviously know power and control, but the humane aspect of it, Pete, makes me sick.
Yeah, and really, this doesn't have to be a huge American footprint to fight this. In Iraq, you can fight it with the Sunni tribes, and you can fight it with the Kurds. Syria, let's just make sure we don't support the bad guys, and Assad maintaining power and bringing some stability back to that country may not be a bad idea. In Libya, we've got to find a new strong man to lead that government. And none of these are very pretty options, okay? But they're a whole lot better than what the current situation is. And I think it's the wrong strategy to go into any of these countries and put a significant number of American boots on the ground and American lives at risk. The people in these regions, they're willing to fight Al-Qaeda. They're willing to fight ISIS and take those structures out. They're willing to do it. We ought to just help them do it.
Exactly. Pete, last question, and I know with your experience on in Congress, on the House, Select Committee on Intelligence, the issue of the southernmost border and the illegal immigration, and you wonder, why are we allowing this type of, just pouring over? We're being taken advantage of, the cartels. They're making money bringing people in. What's your take on the House of Representatives about why the lack of fortitude, the lack of getting any kind of results out of this?
Well, because you've got major divisions in the country, and you've got a lack of will coming out of the White House to actually pass immigration reform. Again, it's one of the reasons that the American people are frustrated. They just know that a country of laws can't survive with open borders where we don't track and we don't go through a process to determine who we're going to let in and who we're not going to let in. And it's a very porous border, and there are bad people coming in each and every day.
Yeah, it's horrible, and you nailed it, Pete. Pete, it's great to have you on. Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Hoekstra, he recently penned a book, The Architects of Disaster, The Destruction of Libya. You can find him on the website investigativeproject.org. and he's a former congressman from the great state of Michigan for 18 years from 1993 to 2011, and the former chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Pete, it's always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much, and stay safe, and we look forward to more of your writing.
Great, good. Thanks. Good to talk to you, and we'll look forward to doing it again.
Good. Thank you, Pete. Take care.
Yep, goodbye.
All right. Wow, fascinating. All right, we'll be right back. More on the Sunrise Show. You can catch us on the web, kcmxam.com. You can find us. We'll be tweeting out, commenting on our Facebook page, Sunrise on KCMX. All of our links are on the website, kcmxam.com. We'll get to a break and come right back. We'll take your calls as well, 541-772-8255. Back after this on the Sunrise Show